Although this video speaks directly to teachers, the information provided is relevant for anyone working with or around children in schools. If you're an adult working in any capacity in a school with children, it's your responsibility to speak up to keep them safe.
My name is Sheldon Kennedy, and I was sexually abused as a child. If you suspect a child is being abused, please say something. I know there were many people who suspected something was going on with me, but they didn't have the confidence or knowledge to act on it. My life could have been very different if someone had the courage to stand up on my behalf. It's totally understandable why someone would worry about getting involved. They wonder if they're overreacting. Is it any of their business? Will they destroy a family unnecessarily? And those are great questions. It is always the right decision to say something. And today, we will help you understand why.
I've been teaching for about 15 years now. And a couple of years ago, a student came to me and she had some things to tell me. And she wanted to know what I thought of them. She was a little confused on it. I thought that there was definitely something not right here and that we needed to do something to help this girl and get her some protection. When the student first came to me and told me her situation, I was really quite shocked about it, but I didn't want her to see that reaction in me. I didn't want her to feel uncomfortable or that I was judging her in any way, so I didn't let my own feelings show.
Sometimes with kids, when they get out of the home, this is really the first interactions they'll have with adults other than family members. So this might be that next trusting relationship they have where they feel comfortable enough talking to somebody to pass on the information because this lifestyle's become so normal to them that they don't even realize there might be something out there.
I wondered what to do. How would it affect her if I reported it? But I knew I had to report it because it is such an important situation. So I just took it to my principal and he knew where to go from there.
Hello, Children's Services.
I was the officer who was assigned this file. I received Carla's information that had been phoned in, and we took that information, and with my Child and Family Services partner and I, we both looked into our databases, and that's where we learned so much more about the family. So Carla's little piece of information that may have been disturbing, or with other files, it might seem insignificant, but that might be that piece of the puzzle we need to really get an investigation going.
This child now has a future, and I know she's got lots of opportunities ahead of her, and I did very little. All I did was pass the information on.
A school's role in keeping our kids safe.
Carla and her principal did the right thing. It's your legal responsibility to report. In this video, we'll show you what to do if a child shares that he or she is being abused. You will learn how to recognize signs of potential abuse, how to respond if a child discloses abuse, and how to report suspected abuse. It is so important to take action if you suspect anything. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. You could be the difference in a child's life.
Recognizing the signs of potential abuse.
Traumatic emotional events can damage the brain at any point, but may produce more significant problems when it happens to young children because of the way it affects the developing brain. Building a brain is like building a house. You need a strong foundation to support the walls and the roof. In a human brain, the foundation is comprised of basic circuits that support the formation of more complex circuits later in development. Without this strong foundation, brain development can be compromised as the child grows.
Experiencing a traumatic event or having ongoing chronically stressful experiences like child abuse and neglect produces what scientists call toxic stress. We also know that toxic stress can produce difficulties with learning, with memory, with forming strong, stable relationships, and with other sorts of health outcomes later in life.
That's why it's our responsibility to get informed about child abuse. We need to know what to look for, how to respond supportively, as well as the correct procedures for reporting.
Well, the good news is the effects of toxic stress are reversible. That's why it's so important to recognize those signs and symptoms, report them when we see them, so that we can get kids the interventions that they need that will help get their development back on track.
In Alberta, the Child, Youth and Family Enhancement Act states that a child is in need of intervention if there are reasonable and probable grounds to believe that the survival, security, or development of the child is endangered. In other words, if we have reason to suspect any lack of care or maltreatment that may be causing physical injury or emotional damage to a child, a teacher is responsible to report the suspected abuse. They are not responsible to prove it. Before focusing on how to recognize specific types of abuse, there are some red flags that may indicate any type of abuse or serious problem in a student's life.
As a teacher, it's really important that you pay close attention to your students. Be aware if the student exhibits sudden or extreme changes in performance, behavior, or emotions, is often fearful, withdrawn, or overly aggressive, is abusing drugs or alcohol, or engaging in self-destructive activities, arrives early, stays late, and does not want to go home.
Types of child abuse.
There are 4 main types of child abuse: neglect, physical, sexual, and emotional. Neglect occurs when a caregiver or guardian is unable or unwilling to provide the child in their care with the necessities of life, such as food, clothing, shelter, essential medical treatment, or adequate care or supervision.
So it's important to consider neglect when a student consistently has unattended medical concerns or dental concerns, complains they are hungry, are underweight, or do not have lunch or breakfast, if they are unclean or unsuitably dressed for the weather, misses school without an explanation, says they are home alone or taking on adult responsibilities. And again, it's important to take these into consideration if they are on a consistent basis.
Physical abuse is when a child is physically injured and there is a substantial and observable injury to any part of the body as a result of non-accidental use of force.
It's important that you consider the possibility of physical abuse if you see a child who has unexplained bruises or injuries, especially in various stages of healing, tries to explain the bruises or injuries in a way that does not match what the injuries look like, consistently wears inappropriate clothing for the weather as a way to cover their body, or is extremely wary of physical contact with adults.
Sexual abuse is when a child is inappropriately exposed or subjected to sexual contact, activity, or behavior, including prostitution activities.
When contact or touch is involved, the abuse may happen by improper touching in the sexual areas, including the mouth, breasts, buttocks, anus, and genital area. A child being forced or asked to touch another person's sexual areas. Sexual abuse may also be non-contact. This could involve convincing or forcing a child to listen to sexual talk or expose their sexual areas. Exposing a child to sexual activities or sexual body parts in person or through technology.
Another type of sexual abuse is sexual exploitation. This occurs when a child or youth is engaged in sex or sexual acts in exchange for money, drugs, food, shelter, protection, or other basics of life. It also includes involving children or youth in creating pornography, sexually explicit websites, or spreading inappropriate photos of a sexual nature.
You'll likely see or hear more than one red flag when a child is being sexually abused. Other signs of sexual abuse may include advanced sexual knowledge most kids their age would not know, sexualized behavior that is not consensual, that's beyond the student's age of development, or continues despite being asked to stop. Signs of sexual exploitation may include suddenly having many new material items or having much older boyfriends or girlfriends.
Emotional abuse is when a child's mental or emotional functioning or development is impaired because of things such as rejection, being deprived of affection or cognitive stimulation, being exposed to domestic violence or severe domestic disharmony, inappropriate criticism, threats, humiliation, expectations, or accusations, or negative exposure to someone in the home with a mental or emotional condition or chronic alcohol or drug use.
A student may be experiencing emotional abuse when they are often overcompliant or apologetic, either boastful or very negative about themselves. This may include self-harming or suicidal thoughts and behaviors, having trouble concentrating or learning, overly emotional, or complaining of stress-related conditions such as headaches or stomach aches.
Just seeing one of these signs is not necessarily an indicator of abuse. They'll often come in clusters or in groups.
What to do if you suspect abuse?
What's happening at home?
You really need to remember that it's okay to get curious. You need to ask some questions.
How does that make you feel?
Asking a question that elicits a yes or no answer is probably not a great question.
So tell me, how are things going at home?
As an example, if you have a student that has had a number of off days and you're going to talk to them about it, instead of saying something like, "Are you okay?" you might rephrase that and say something like,
Hey, you seem really distracted lately. How you doing? You should always talk to them in a non-judgmental way, just casually asking them, oh, I noticed you have a bruise, or what's going on, or you're kind of hungry, is everything okay? Just kind of keep that doorway open for communication.
And once you get that partial idea that, you know what, abuse is happening, it's time for your phone call. You don't need to dig deeper. That's our job, to dig deeper.
Caregiver behaviors may also raise your level of concern. Again, pay close attention when a caregiver consistently belittles or blames a child or youth, views them as bad or burdensome, seems unconcerned about their welfare, or appears to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
Well, we know that people react to stress differently, but we also know that for some caregivers, when they're under enormous amounts of stress, they might not be able to meet their child's physical and emotional needs. Things like mental illness, addiction, unemployment, poverty are all factors that can increase the risk for child maltreatment.
It's important to use your gut instinct or spidey senses with children. A student may give you a clue that something's wrong, as full disclosure can be very scary. Examples might include drawing a picture that requires further explanation, dropping hints, or making concerning comments. Statements that require follow-up could sound like,
I don't like going to Aunt Sally's house. Her new boyfriend's weird. My stepbrother does stuff to me. My friend said that she was...
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Remember, if what you hear or see is ambiguous, use an open-ended phrase to ask the student to tell you more. For example, tell me more about Aunt Sally's boyfriend.
What to do if a child discloses abuse?
You know that student we were talking about a bit last week? Just had another conversation with them, and
If the child does disclose, stop asking questions. Do not investigate or probe. When you suspect abuse, you legally must make a report to Children's Services. Call 403-297-2995 in Calgary, 780-422-2001 in Edmonton, or call toll-free in Alberta at 1-800-638-0715.
Miss Clark, can I tell you something?
Of course, buddy. Come have a seat.
When supporting a child through a disclosure, remain calm.
While you may feel upset, sad, or shocked, the student's needs must come first. Research shows that a child who feels supported and safe when disclosing has the most successful chance of recovery. If you are really not able to handle it, reassure the child and escort them to tell another safe staff member. Remain non-judgmental and accept the child's feelings. In over 95% of cases, children know their abusers and may have mixed feelings.
I believe you, and I know what steps we can take.
It's really important that you tell the student you believe them and reassure them that you'll get help.
So I think it would be a good idea for us to take a trip to the guidance counselor.
If they ask you not to say anything, tell them you cannot keep this a secret and you want to keep them safe. Don't make promises you can't keep, such as making sure the offender will go to jail, and write down exactly what the student told you as soon as you can.
If you have any suspicions, it is your legal responsibility to go forward and report it. Then it's up to others to investigate it further and find out, and they know what to do. You don't have to worry about what should I be doing, because there are the steps to follow and you just take those steps.
Good afternoon, Southern Alberta Children's Services.
Hi, yes. I'd like to talk to you about a concern I have with a student I was just talking to.
If you suspect that a child is at risk, it's the law to report your concerns and let the experts solve the rest of the puzzle. Your call could be the one that triggers an intervention. It's not the role of the school staff, coaches, daycare providers, or anyone bringing concerns forward to prove or disprove the abuse. Do not worry about sharing too much information when a child is at risk.
Do you recall where the bruising was on her arm?
I know that by going to my principal and we made the call, that this changed this little girl's life and gave her a chance for a future. I know it was my legal responsibility, and it was also the right thing to do.
Frequently asked questions.
All right, now we've learned how to recognize signs of potential abuse, respond if a child discloses abuse, and report suspected abuse. But this is all easier said than done. It can feel scary to report your suspicions. Teachers across Alberta have a lot of questions and concerns about this topic, so we decided who better to ask than them. We've got two experts with us from Children's Services to help answer your questions. Let's get to our first teacher question.
So let's say I have a student who's been missing a lot of school and experiencing some behavior changes, and I may suspect abuse. Do I have to go to my principal first?
Sheldon?
You would be legally obligated as the teacher or the professional who got the disclosure or has the concerns themselves to call us directly.
What if a teacher's uncomfortable making that phone call by themselves?
By all means, they could approach their principal or approach a support person, a colleague, and perhaps they have the same concerns. The two of them or a group of them could call in together and express their concerns to Children's Services.
But the individual that was disclosed to needs to make that phone call.
Absolutely.
How do I know if I have enough information to call?
Carrie?
Well, if you're concerned, then give us a call. You just have to believe or be concerned. You don't have to have what you think is enough information. If your gut tells you that you believe that there might be a concern, then you should make the call.
In my understanding, it's not the teacher's job to prove the abuse.
Absolutely, you're correct. That's not their job. The teacher's job is done when they have made the call to Children's Services.
I want to make a report about a student I'm concerned about.
When calling Child and Family Services, will it be kept confidential? I really want to keep the trust of the student.
Sheldon?
The confidentiality of the caller is guaranteed under the Child, Youth and Family Enhancement Act. We would be breaking the law if we disclosed the caller to anyone.
What information do I need on hand when calling Children's Services?
Well, it's really important to have all the information that you're aware of about your concern, but also any demographic information like the child's name, birth date, their address, parents' phone numbers. If you know if they have any siblings, even if you don't know their names, that's really helpful. And then if you know of any supportive individuals in that child's life, whether it be extended family or friends that are connected with that family or with that child, can really help us in our assessment for that family.
What kind of questions will the Children's Services worker ask me about the situation?
Sheldon?
The worker on the end of the line is going to ask a few questions.
Did she talk about anyone else knowing about the abuse?
They're going to want to know, is the child or is the family a member of First Nations or another visible minority? Does the child have any special needs? Are there any safety concerns in the family home, such as weapons or animals that you may know about that may be dangerous for the worker that may attend the home? Has there been a time in the past when things have been better or things have been different for this child, and what did that look like? Do you know of any supports offered to the family and the results of those supports? Are there family or friends in the child's life that are positive for them? And finally, if the caller can provide any supports to the family directly themselves.
After the call, will I hear back?
That's an important one. Carrie, do you want to answer that?
Well, it's a bit of a gray area that certainly from Children's Services that we share as much information as we can with professionals when they're calling, but also look at family confidentiality or the confidentiality for the clients.
Well, I think that's a key piece of information for teachers, knowing that they can call back.
Absolutely, at any time. Certainly they can call back to find out where things have gone, but also if there's any concerns they're seeing. If children have reacted or behaved in a different way on the following days since they've made a report or a concern.
I think it's important we create that relationship amongst Children's Services and schools.
Absolutely, I agree.
So now that I've reported the abuse, what do I do next?
Now what? Nothing. Your role is done. Once you've reported your concerns, it becomes up to Child and Family Services. Children's Services determine where we go from there. We would determine whether there's enough information to proceed to an assessment. Perhaps we're already aware of that information. Perhaps we have a file open already. If we did, we'd share that information with the caseworker or the site that had the file, and they would proceed accordingly.
What if I make a report and the parents are not negligent?
The responsibility for Children's Services is to really make that assessment and determine, is there a child protection issue going on, or is that child being abused or there's concern? As a teacher or somebody reporting, that you certainly don't need to worry about whether that's true or not true. You just have to believe. And then we take on that responsibility of doing that assessment to determine, is there something actually going on? And there's lots of times that we determine from either phone calls or actually talking to the family and children to find out that there isn't a need for us to be involved.
So can a school expect a call back after they make a report on a case like this?
Typically it doesn't happen, but certainly there are times where Children's Services may make a call to the school if there's a reason that they feel that the school or the teacher needs to have some information. And certainly a teacher can at any time give us a call back if they're worried or concerned, that communication can go back and forth in that sense.
So I have a question. It's kind of unrelated to kids. You know, all of our focus has been on the kids, but if I look at my case and the Graham James case, Sheldon, I look at all the adults that had a gut feeling or they suspected something was going on with another adult, with Graham James, and they didn't do anything. They probably didn't know what to do. So as, you know, an adult, how do we, if we have a teacher or, you know, a family member or a coach or, you know, a neighbor that we suspect is abusing a child, what do we do? How do we report? How do we, you know, make that complaint on another adult?
If you have a gut feeling that something's happening, whether a child's being abused, whether you think an adult may be doing something to a child, I think it's very important that you phone either the police or Children's Services.
So she has bruising on her currently.
Children's Services will only become involved when a parent is not keeping their child safe. The police become involved when something is happening outside of the home. So the police's role is to investigate crime. So if you have a gut feeling that something's happening, phone Children's Services or phone the police, and they will point you in the right direction.
So at the end of the day, I think what we're talking about, it's no different than with the child. If your gut's telling you something's wrong and you have suspicions or you've got some sort of knowledge around potential abuse, make the call.
Absolutely.
Carrie, Sheldon, thank you for helping us better understand the importance of reporting suspected abuse. Teachers, we know this is a lot to digest and you may feel a lot of weight on your shoulders, but we are here with you and we want you to feel empowered. In order to help others, you need to take care of yourself. Be aware of the signs of stress. Monitor your level of irritability, concentration, and intense feelings or thoughts that don't lessen over time. Don't go it alone. While still respecting the confidentiality of students, get support from your colleagues, family, and friends. Try to eat well, exercise, find time to reflect, and have some fun. If you are still experiencing signs of compassion fatigue 2 or 3 weeks later, ask your principal or supervisor about professional services that may be available to you.
Good morning, class. I hope everyone's had a nice weekend.
The relationships teachers have with their students are very important for creating safe and inspiring classrooms. Positive experiences and healthy relationships lead to improved learning and behavior. About 25% of students in any given classroom in Alberta will have experienced some type of trauma. Therefore, it's essential to provide a welcoming, caring, respectful, and safe environment for all students. To build a strong foundation for learning in your classroom, be approachable.
Nice one!
Let students know you care. Support positive behavior by establishing predictable routines and consistent, fair expectations. Keep an open mind, check your assumptions, observe, and be responsive. Teach all students the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships and how to ask for help when they need it.
Thank you so much for taking the time to learn about the signs of abuse and how you can help children who may be struggling. Think of this as an opportunity to change the cycle of abuse. Your students really need you. They are children, we are adults. They're talking, but we're not acting, and that needs to change. No more silence. Let's stand together and have the courage to speak up and protect them.